Yo, what is going on, guys? Flashverse here, and welcome back to another video on Superman and Lois. And this will be my review and breakdown for Superman and Lois Season 2, Episode 2, titled The Ties That Bind. And once again, guys, this was another great episode of Superman and Lois, in my opinion. We got to see a lot more of Natalie during this episode, which was something I really liked. I really liked how she was able to interact with other characters during this episode. She was really friendly when it came to the boys towards the end of the episode, and obviously that scene she shared with Sarah later on in the episode as well, before the end obviously, but it was later on in the episode. It was a great scene with her, and we had a lot more of the visions going on with Clark. I know we already assumed what the reason behind it was, but we finally actually found out on the show what the reasoning was. As I said, we already knew what it was, but they just revealed it. And another thing I also really liked was how they were able to get all these characters involved in such a great way where you just don't get bored. You're invested in all of their stories, and that was something I really liked. We had a bunch of other cool stuff, such as a returning character, which I will not mention yet because I didn't give the spoiler warning, and also Jordan using more of his abilities, which was something I really loved, and I will probably make a separate theory video about that. And holy crap, that ending we need to talk about as well, because it does hint to another villain coming this season. But for those who haven't seen the episode, spoiler alert, because this is a review and breakdown after all, so I'll be going over some major spoilers which you certainly would want to hear from me. So if you haven't seen the episode, go watch the episode and come back later for this review and breakdown. But for those who are staying, be sure to drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel so you are aware of more Arrowverse content coming your way. Okay, so this episode kicks off with Lois making breakfast for the family and also the new guests which are now living in the house. And it's a pretty big breakfast, and we have Natalie and John Henry Irons joining in the breakfast, and Natalie mentions that she's vegan, so Lois is just like, okay, I can just go and grab a bit of oatmeals. But Clark then has another vision, and he just drops to the floor, pretty much scaring everyone, because Clark didn't tell anyone about these visions, he just kept it for himself. But eventually Clark tells John Henry Irons and Lois about these visions that he's been having, and he does suspect that the eradication process could have led him to having General Zod's memories just entering his mind. So Clark plans on going to the one person who could possibly help him, because he wants to make sure that he is right. And we do obviously find out later on in the episode that the only person that could help him at this point is Thawne, as he's pretty much the expert behind the eradication process. Now, John Henry Irons then offers to take the kids to the high school because it is Natalie's first day anyway, so he could just drop them off. And Lana also has a mayoral event planned in this cafe, but the current mayor pretty much crashes that event, and he's just like, okay, you know what, you could have the cafe for yourself now, but he pretty much ruins it anyways. But Natalie then has her first day at school, and she quickly becomes friends with Sarah after she joins the lunch with Sarah and Jordan. We then have Clark paying a visit to Thawne, and Clark asks for his help. However, Thawne was of no use, and he does mention how it is not possible for the eradication process being behind this, saying that Tal has not lived anything similar to Clark, and he used the eradicator at a much bigger scale than Clark. But Tal does know a way where he could help Clark, but obviously Clark refuses because this means that he's gonna have to let Thawne go free. We do also have a storyline with Lois during this episode, which was a pretty interesting one, and it was with Lois and Chrissy Beppo, and they're essentially talking about one of Lois's old articles going public due to a recent podcast pretty much denying and downplaying everything Lois said in the article. And due to this, we do have this storyline where Chrissy Beppo is essentially beginning to doubt Lois's sources of liability because she doesn't really mention her sources all that much. And Lois does pretty much reassure Chrissy Beppo that that whole eradicator and that DOD thing from last season was just a one-off thing. She doesn't normally do that. So that does get Chrissy a bit more comfortable, but as we find out later on in the episode, this does get bigger and bigger. We then head back to the mayoral event. However, Lana discovers that her candidate, I forgot his name, but he essentially got a job offer somewhere else, and he chose to leave because being a mayor is not a guaranteed thing for him. He doesn't know for sure that he will win, whereas this job, it fully secures his life. He does have a family to provide for as well. So he's just like, you know what, I'm gonna leave. And this does pretty much leave Lana in this state of pretty much being disturbed, because she does not want this current mayor to become mayor once again, because she gave the Cushings a hard time last season. Now, another thing that we have been continuing on from last episode going into this episode was the whole Jordan and Sarah storyline, and pretty much Sarah just kept on avoiding Jordan. She's been finding ways to avoid him, and it's not going too well for Sarah because Jordan just keeps finding her. He's just like, okay, do you want to go have lunch together? Do you want to go to this place together? And, you know, Sarah's finding it hard to pretty much escape from his sight. And she does also make plans with Natalie so that she could help fix the car. And she basically uses that as a way to get away from Jordan. And obviously, as I said, we do find out later on why she's doing this. It is pretty interesting, and I cannot wait to see where it goes. But we then have Lois and Chrissy Beppo doing some journalist stuff where they're trying to find out more about the mines and how this could have resulted to an earthquake taking place last episode. But the Amertech lady pretty much denies the claims, in which she is right because they were not the cause of the earthquake. But Lois does also question if they could potentially be digging for X-Kryptonite as well, because we do know that X-Kryptonite is down those mines, in which if she does, that would be terrible, because X-Kryptonite is what Talaroth obviously used to create that whole Kryptonian army. So if the Amertech lady pretty much was after the same thing, then it would not go too well for her. But obviously she is not after the same thing. As we find out later on in the episode, she's after something else. So she does also deny the claims of the X-Kryptonite. But Lois wants to know more about these earthquakes taking place and why it's actually happening, and she wants to fully investigate what's going down in these mines. So she does ask John Henry Irons' help to pretty much get to the bottom of what's happening. But John is pretty hesitant because at first he thinks that he's going to have to put on the suit, in which Lois is like, no, you do not have to put on the suit, and plus, please help me, this is just a one-time thing. And then after a bit of convincing, John's like, okay, fine, I'm going to help you, but this one time only. Because it seems like he just put that steel life behind ever since Natalie arrived on Earth. He just wants to focus on being a dad, which is obviously understandable because he doesn't want to put his life at risk and pretty much leave Natalie without any parents. So yeah, we have John Henry Irons and Lois going to the mines, and he does use this tech which does analyze seismic waves in case an earthquake does happen, and they will be able to pretty much get a well reading of like how severe the earthquake is. They could pretty much find out what's going on. They could get to the bottom of this, and this was something I was really interested in as well. It was a really cool storyline. The interactions between John Henry Irons and this version of Lois Lane was also something I really liked about this episode as well. Now, while all of that stuff is happening, we have Clark going to stop a terrorist attack. However, this villain inhales X-Kryptonite after Clark seems to have defeated him pretty easily. But after this villain inhales the X-Kryptonite, he obviously becomes much stronger. And during the process, Clark begins to have these visions again, and this does lead to the villain beating Clark up pretty easily. But we then have the X-Kryptonite soldiers of the DoD saving Clark, which was a pretty cool scene, especially with us seeing Tag Harris return. I'm very invested in this story between the whole DoD and them creating X-Kryptonite soldiers to pretty much be the new Superman, which serves the DoD, because as we saw, Clark and Anderson do have some conflict taking place. But I am really interested to see where this storyline with these super soldiers progresses, because from what I'm seeing, it's not going to end too well. So something I am expecting to see is when Doomsday arrives, these soldiers will pretty much be wiped out. They will just be absolutely destroyed because of how powerful Doomsday is. And then that's going to go to Anderson pretty much getting all the blame, and Clark's just going to go like, oh, I told you this was too dangerous. You shouldn't have done this in the first place. And I think that's going to, like, you know, fully put pressure on this relationship between Anderson and Clark. And if this does happen, I am really interested to see how it goes. But yeah, this whole super soldiers and this whole X-Kryptonite soldiers serving the DoD is a pretty interesting storyline, and as I said, I cannot wait to see where this develops. But yeah, as I said, Clark gets knocked out and he now wakes up in the medbay in the DoD, and Anderson continues to tell Clark that he cannot get involved with the DoD operations if he isn't on the team. He won't have access to any of those facilities, meaning he's gonna have to figure out this Vision issue all on his own. So they do have some conflict taking place during this episode, and they do also have some conflict about the way Anderson is using this ex-Kryptonite team as soldiers, especially with someone like Tag Harris just barely being 18. It just shows what type of an unlikable character Anderson is, and I really don't like him, but we do know that there is going to be something big planned for him this season, because we do know that in the comics Anderson does become this character known as Outburst, so I am really interested to see how that develops. Will he like put some ex-Kryptonite experimentation on himself and he becomes Outburst like that? I'm not entirely sure, but it is pretty interesting. But yeah, with Clark now being on his own, he does go to the one person who can help him. So he breaks Tal-Rho out of jail, and Tal-Rho does claim that he's powerless. And so if they go to the fortress, nothing will happen. He's powerless because the solar blast that John Henry Irons shot him with drained him from his abilities. That's what he claims happened, but he was perfectly fine. He's just waiting for the right moment. Though Jordan comes along to watch Clark's back as well, as he has been having a really tough time lately, especially with how things have been going with Sarah. So Clark is just like, okay, fine, you can join me as well. But yeah, it was really, really great to see, you know, how Clark is beginning to take Jordan out to these missions. Obviously, he didn't know that it was going to be as dangerous as it ended up being, because if it was, Clark wouldn't have taken his son there in the first place, so he didn't really know. But it was really great to see those three characters share the screen again, and once again it was really great to see Tal-Rho return, and he had some incredibly well acted scenes during this episode. He had one with Jordan, and then later on in the episode he has this incredible scene between Lara Lorvan and Tal-Rho, which I will get to in a bit. But yeah, speaking of Lara Lorvan, we have Tal-Rho pretty much using the next crystal that he had in store, because from last season we did find out that he also took Lara Lorvan's crystal. I can't remember what it was called, but he places it in and we see the projection of Lara Lorvan. So we do have Clark seeing his mother, and as Tal said, it was quite the family reunion. But yeah, Lara Lorvan's excited to see her two sons together. She's like, oh, you two have found each other. Oh, that's great. My two sons are together. But then Clark pretty much explains everything. And then Lara Lorvan is pretty much horrified to hear about the way that Tal-Rho used the Eradicator to pretty much rebirth Krypton on Earth by creating all these different Kryptonian soldiers. And this was the really well acted scene I was talking about. It was between Morgan Edge and Lara Lorvan. And, you know, I really liked how Lara started to talk about Zeta-Rho and how she didn't know about Tal's existence until later on. And how Tal pretty much blamed Lara for being this way because she was not there. She chose her favorite son instead. He does get petty about it, and he does get pretty jealous about this during the episode, but then he does mention how he was left all alone with the abuse of his father, so that was a really good scene which I really liked in this episode as well. But yeah, we learned that this version of her consciousness survived the destruction of Krypton, and it was only then, so obviously she wouldn't remember the things like last season, where we had Lana Lang pretty much being exposed to the Eradicator and her becoming Lara Lorvan. She wouldn't remember that. She would just be this consciousness version of Lara Lorvan who's only there after destruction of Krypton, and she would just pretty much have all the memories prior to last season. But yeah, while all of that is happening, we do have Natalie and Sarah getting the car started. Natalie was able to use her techie knowledge to quite quickly fix the car. It was really impressive on Sarah's behalf, and we do have this great interaction between Natalie and Sarah does also mention that she has a secret which she's keeping from Jordan, and she's trying to see if she does have any common areas with Natalie where she's pretty much keeping a secret but she cannot tell anybody, in which in Natalie's case it's in a whole nother level, because she came from a destroyed Earth. In this Earth, she sees someone wearing the face of her own mother, which it pretty much is her mother, but it's another version of her mother, married to Superman, who is the murderer of her own mother. So, and she has to keep the secret of Clark and the boys. So her situation is much bigger than Sarah's over here. And Natalie does get sensitive when they're talking about this topic, so Sarah doesn't keep going on with it. Natalie just starts the car and then the scene ends. But we have another earthquake beginning, and Clark is beginning to have another vision. And this is when we have Lois and John going to check what's actually going on. And we do see like the seismic activity is in a whole new level. But Taro breaks free from the cuffs, and it was kind of expected. I did always feel like Tal did have some sort of trick up his sleeve, so I wasn't too convinced that he lost his powers. However, I did expect him to kind of feel a bit more depowered due to the lack of exposure of the sun. So I did expect him to be depowered because of this. However, I did expect that he was going to have his powers. I wasn't convinced that he lost it. But obviously that is the reveal in the episode. He does reveal that he didn't lose his abilities. He was just playing with Clark all along. So while Clark is getting checked up by his mother, Tara uses this opportunity to take action against Superman, and Jordan steps in to defend his father, and it turns out Jordan is getting even stronger. Like, his heat vision can actually hurt Tal right now, as we do see in the episode, and he does also hit a lot harder than he's done before, so his powers are evolving, and I am really interested to see where this is gonna go, because obviously it's leading to a big Superboy setup, and I'm gonna expect it that he will become Superboy by the end of this season, but I'm not entirely sure. But Tal gets the upper hand on him eventually, and he holds him in a chokehold. And we then cut back to the mines, in which whatever is in those mines, in which we do know that it's Doomsday, but they don't know, so that's why I referred it to as whatever. But we do know it's Doomsday, and Doomsday is killing the workers in the mines. And this does lead to one of the workers blowing the mines up so that they're able to get rid of this beast. But unfortunately, that doesn't go too well. But as Jordan's held in a chokehold, Clark's visions stop, and this is where he goes and blasts Tal across the room, and Superman just pretty much just continuously keeps punching Tal for hurting his son, and it was a really great scene. I really loved it. Just seeing Clark go crazy and unleashing all of that anger was something I really liked. But Laura intervenes, and she stops this conflict from taking place. And then this leads to the big reveal where Lara mentions that she knows what's going on with Clark. And they do leave that in the suspense where it just keeps us, eager to find out what's going on. But in like the last few moments of the episode, Tara is returned to prison, and Lois goes to the Gazette with the information that someone else is causing the earthquakes, not the mines. And we do have Chrissy Beppo talking about this viral story against Lois and how it's growing and becoming more and more intense. And then this leads to Lois revealing that it was her sister, Lucy, who was her hidden informant, and they need to get in touch with her or else Lois is in pretty much hot water. So that does explain how Lucy then will be playing into this season. And as I said before in the previous Superman and Lois video that I did, she is a recurring character. She will not be a series regular, so you will probably see her like once or twice this season, and that will pretty much be it. But we do also have Kyle returning home, and he does have this idea for Lana to run as mayor, and Lana was thinking the same thing. She's already signed she started the application. So yeah, I'm really interested to see where that goes as well. But we do have this really nice moment between Jonathan and Jordan where they briefly talk about their day and how Jordan almost beats up Tara. It was a pretty nice scene between them, and then Natalie arrives and mentions that Sarah is waiting for Jordan downstairs. And then this is when we have Sarah revealing why she's just been avoiding Jordan, and she reveals that she's kissed a girl at camp. So yeah, she pretty much cheated on Jordan, and Jordan's obviously really disturbed by this. Sarah does mention that it meant nothing, but Jordan doesn't believe it. He just walks off and he's just like, oh, okay, thank you for telling me, see you at school. So yeah, I'm really interested to see where this story progresses and where it goes. But to wrap up the episode, Clark, Lois, and John discover that whatever is happening to Clark is because of another being, and we obviously know that it's Doomsday, and it's the thing in the mines that is causing Clark's visions from taking place, and it's only going to get worse and worse as Doomsday gets out of those mines. But yeah, the episode ends with the lady getting a phone call from someone, and this was a crazy reveal because I wasn't expecting her to be a bad guy, but she did know that something was down there and they have found it. So I'm guessing the person on the phone call is going to be someone like Lex Luthor. That would be really cool to see, especially if we do have John Cryer reprising the role as Lex Luthor. That would be something really cool. But honestly, I'm not entirely sure. I'm only assuming that it's Lex Luthor, but I don't know for 100%. I will make an ending explained video about this pretty soon, maybe during the weekend, so I could think about it more and just give you guys a proper theory rather than just me giving you guys my quick initial thoughts on it right now. But yeah, overall, this was a really good episode once again. It set up so much going into episode 3, and I'm just eager to see what's going to happen next. But yeah guys, thanks for watching. If you guys have enjoyed the video, please give a like and subscribe. Be sure to tell me in the comment section down below what was your favorite part about this episode. And yeah, I will see you guys in my next video.